Chapter 11 The Bonbon Job. Now, Commander Pot really trowed hard down on the accelerator, and the speedometer climbed up and hung around 100 miles an hour, as the great green car, with its supercharger screaming like a banshee, positively ate up the kilometers, which is, instead of miles, how they measure distance on the continent. As each fork or turning in the road came up, he followed the direction indicated by the radar scanner, and with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang going lickety-split, 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 they hurtled on towards the gangster hideout, where Jeremy and Jemima had been locked into a bare, cell-like room at the back of the deserted warehouse. Jeremy's and Jemima's clothes had been thrown in with them, and they now dressed quickly and began, in whispers, just in case anybody might be listening at the door, to wonder where they were and what was going to happen to them, and above all, when somebody was going to bring them something for their breakfast. Jeremy was just telling Jemima about the mysterious words of Joe the Monster doing the bonbon job and Soapy using jelly when the door was unlocked and Joe the Monster himself came in, beaming, as far as with his ugly mug he could beam, while behind him Soapy Sam followed with a tray that he put down on the floor beside the children. There was no furniture in the room, not a stick of it. Jeremy got stoutly to his feet and said in a firm voice, as much as he could muster, "Where are we? And what are you going to do with us? You'll get into bad trouble if you don't take us back to our parents straight away. You'll have the police after you any moment now." And he glared as big as a glare as he could back into the bearded face of the huge man who towered above him. "Ho, ho, that's good. That's real good. You hear that, Soapy? The young'uns says the cops will be after me." He turned back to Jeremy and leered hideously down at him. "Why, my little man, the cops have been after me since I was smaller than you. Think of that now. All these years they've been hunting after me and my pals, and they ain't caught up yet. Often been sniffing at me heels, mark you. Even offered 10,000 pounds for what they are pleased to call information leading to my apprehension, which, in English, means how to catch me. And now you expect me to quake in my shoes because of a little English family called Pot. Ha, ha, ha!" He positively shook with demonic laughter. Jeremy said angrily, "We're not so little as all that. My father was a commander in the Navy, and he is a famous inventor and explorer. Anyway, besides us, there's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang." "And who might that be?" "It's not a he. It's a she. And she's a car, the most wonderful car in the world. She's Jeremy was going to say magical, but he shut his mouth just in time. It's better to keep that part secret. "Oh, you mean that old green rattletrap of yours?" sneered Joe the Monster. "I'll give you it's certainly an old rum bus." Joe the Monster has a very gravelly voice. "The way it took to the air last evening when we had you cornered, I suppose your inventor Pa has found some way to make a car fly. That right?" Joe the Monster's small, pig-like eyes became smaller and craftier than ever. "Suppose you've got something there. That invention might be worth a lot of money in the right hands. Now, if you'd like to tell your Pa, to tell your old pal Joe how it's done, maybe I can take out some patents and give your dad a piece of the money. What about that, young feller? You and me go into a partnership?" Jeremy said bluntly, "I don't know how it works, and I wouldn't tell you if I did know." "Oh, well," said Joe the Monster, "I guess I'm not all that keen into going to the motor car business. Now then, let's get down to brass tacks. And then you two youngsters can tuck in so you can that scrumptious brekkie that Soapy's brewing up for you. Now then. He looked at the two of them craftily. Just the two of you both listen to me. And if you do what you're told, you'll come to no harm. And even earn yourself a bit of pocket money into the bargain. And when it's over, I'll see you're both put on a train and sent back to your precious daddy and mumsy in that hotel in Calais. Jeremy opened his mouth to speak, but Joe the Monster held up a big, hairy fist. Now don't you argue with me, young'un, and I don't want any more of your lip. Just listen carefully to what you have to do. He paused and spoke slowly, looking from one to the other of them, to see that they were paying attention. Now, all I'm telling both of you to do is go and buy yourselves a big box of chocolates. How would you like that? Just kind of a reward for being a jolly couple kids, see? I like kids. I really love them. Joe the Monster tried to put a sweet, fatherly expression on his face, but all that he could manage was a kind of ape-like grimace. Now then, not far away from here, 20 minutes ride, is the most famous chocolate shop in the world. It's called Le Bon Bon, which, in case you don't know, is French for sweet. And it's run by an old geezer called Monsieur Bon Bon. He's been in it for 50 years, and his dad before him, and his granddad before that, and he makes the finest sweets and chocolates in the world, get me? Absolutely top lollies. Now, this here old geezer's a funny old guy, and he only opens the shop for about 4 hours in the middle of the day. Can't be bothered to keep it open any longer because he and his parents have made so much money that he doesn't have to work too hard, see? So, he keeps the shop open from 10 to 12 in the morning and 2 to 4 in the afternoon. At 12 o'clock this morning, me and my pals are going to drive you round there and give you a pocket full of money. And all you've got to do is what I tell you. You walk into the shop and ask for a box of chocolates costing 4,000 francs. That's about 3 English pounds in the old francs, which is the only kind of money I understand. So you can see it's a fine box of chocolates, eh? And they looked inquiringly from one to the other. Not bad, said Jeremy grudgingly, as if in his family they were given a 3-pound box of chocolates every day. Not bad, he says, shouted Joe the Monster angrily. I'll say it's not bad. It's the biggest box of chocolates either you have ever seen. And he quickly calmed down, fished out a wallet stuffed with banknotes, and took out one and handed it to Jeremy. There you are, 5,000 francs. I'll tell you what, I'll even let you keep the change. So there you are, duckies. All you do is walk into the shop together when I tell you, hand over the money, and say politely, a box of chocolates for 4,000 francs, please. The old geezel don't know much English, but he'll understand that sentence in English, any language under the sun. Then when you hand him that bit of money and take the chocolates and your change, that's the end of it. Easy job of work, eh? Nice slice of cake. You're a couple of the luckiest kids I ever did see. Now then, you got all that straight? They both nodded. Okay then, said Joe the Monster breezily. Come on, Soapy. Let's get our chow. Looking at the fine Come on, Soapy. Let's get our chow. Looking at the fine breakfast you did up for these kids, it's making me hungry. And he turned for the door. Ta-ta, kiddies. And be good till Uncle Joe comes and fetches you. He walked out, followed by Soapy Sam, who locked the door behind them. Well, the china on the old tin tray was pretty chipped, and not all that clean. But by this time, Jeremy and Jemima were ravenous, and they cheerfully squatted down on the hard concrete floor and set to. A French breakfast is very different than an English one, to say nothing of an American one, I imagine. To begin with, French bread, instead of being in loaves, comes in long, thin shapes, about the length and width of a policeman's truncheon, and it's mostly crust, but it's very delicious crust. The big slab of French butter tasted more like farm butter than most of the stuff that they get in England, and the strawberry jam was very syrupy, like all French jams, but full of big, fat, whole strawberries. The coffee with milk, which the French call café au lait, was, if you happen to like coffee, better than the wishy-washy stuff you often get in England. So after a bit of rather cautious experimenting, Jeremy and Jemima set to with a will, and between mouthfuls whispered their thoughts and their fears about Joe the Monster's plans. With the helps of the snatches of the conversation that Jeremy had heard in the car, they came to the following conclusion, which, since it's more or less right, I'll pass on to you. They guessed that they were going to be used by Joe the Monster and his gang to rob Monsieur Bonbon. They were to be the innocent pair of monkeys who would be shoved in just before closing, while presumably the gang waited around the corner with perhaps one of them apparently examining the sweets and the shop window, but really watching the twins through it. Jeremy had been given a 5,000 franc note to buy a 4,000 franc box of chocolates, and while Monsieur Bonbon would have to go to the till to get change for it. The keys to the safe are in the till, and as soon as Monsieur Bonbon opened the till, the gangsters would dash in and knock him on the head and seize the keys, which were presumably the keys to the safe where he kept his money. But, whispered Jeremy, I simply can't understand about this business of Soapy using the jelly. What can that mean? There might be jellies in the sweet shop, I suppose. Do you think they're going to gag Monsieur Bonbon with his own jellies so he can't shout for help? They both giggled at that idea, but it was Jemima who got the right answer. You remember yesterday when we blew up Joe the Monster's stores in that huge cave? Well, Daddy said some of the cases were full of stuff called gelignite. And he said it was the stuff that gangsters used to blow up open safes with. Mightn't that jelly be the kind of gangster slang for gelignite? You've got it, whispered Jeremy. By Jove, you've got it. That's just what they're going to do. They'll get the keys out of Monsieur Bonbon's till. And those keys probably open Monsieur Bonbon's safe. Now, for heaven's sake, what are we going to do about it? At this moment, they heard a key in the lock, and Soapy Sam came in to take away the tray and lead them off to wash their hands in a smelly old bathroom at the back of the huge deserted warehouse. Then they were back in their cell again, and the door was locked on them, and they squatted together on the farthest corner away from the door and went on with their urgent whispering. When we go up to the counter to buy the chocolates, said Jeremy, we've somehow got to warn Monsieur Bonbon that there are gangsters outside. But we don't know half a dozen words of French between us. How can we possibly tell him? Could we just make faces and point our fingers at him like guns and shout bang? Said Jemima helpfully. He'd think we were just being cheeky, said Jeremy. We've got to write him some sort of note. But we haven't got any pencils or paper or anything. Well, we've got paper, said Jeremy triumphantly, and he produced the big 5,000 franc note and spread it out between them. Now, if we could just write in big letters, gangsters, across the note, I'm sure it's a word that Monsieur Bonbon will understand. But what can we possibly use for ink? He looked accusingly at Jemima. It's a shame you're not a bit older, because then you'd have lipstick. In adventure stories, the girls are always using lipstick to write notes with. It's not my fault, whispered Jemima furiously. Anyway, I hate the stuff. I once tried mummies, and I ended up looking like I'd speared my face with raspberry jam. Mummy was very angry with me. At least she pretended to be. But I think she was only really trying to stop from laughing. Well, come on, whispered Jeremy urgently. It must be getting near the time. I've got absolutely nothing in my pockets except a handkerchief and some bits of string and my pocket knife. What have you got? Absolutely nothing except my handkerchief, said Jemima despairingly. But isn't there something you can do with your knife? It's full of gadgets and things. By golly! Exclaimed Jeremy. Of course! We can use the sharp tip of the corkscrew and punch holes in the banknote and spell out the word gangster in big letters. Come on, let's get going quickly. You come and sit between me and the door in case anyone looks through the keyhole. And he fished out his pocket knife, opened the corkscrew, and set to work with the 5,000-franc note in front of him on the concrete floor. I'm just going to interject here and say clearly, this was a Swiss Army knife. Pretty obvious to me. They both examined his handiwork and agreed that anyone who handled the note would feel the holes and look at it very suspiciously, and almost certainly hold it up to the light to see if the note had been so badly damaged that it wasn't worth 5,000 francs. Jeremy had only just stowed the note and his knife away in his pocket when the door opened and Joe the Monster came in, followed by Man Mountain Fink. Come on, duckies. Time to go, he said jovially. Now, just one little formality before we set off. I'm sure you kiddies, looked suspiciously from one to the other, I'm sure you kiddies haven't been up to any tricks. But just in case, I'd like to see what's in your pockets. Jeremy gave a sigh of relief. Thank heavens they hadn't found a pencil and paper somewhere and been able to do any of the other tricks that they'd thought out. He innocently emptied his pockets of his pocket knife and handkerchief and showed the 5,000-franc note, well folded up, and Jemima just showed her handkerchief. After that, and after they had been made to pull out the linings of their pockets to show that nothing else was hidden, Joe the Monster said, All right, kiddies, let's go. Remember what you've got to do. Just walk into the shop and ask for a box of chocolates for 4,000 francs, right? And they trooped out, with Man Mountain Fink taking up the rear to prevent any attempt to escape. They piled into the black tourer and were soon roaring off through the streets where, in the distance, the Eiffel Tower, which is a gigantic tower made of iron right in the middle of Paris, stood up like a huge needle in the sky. My. But Mountain Man, Monster Joe, whatever his name is, he really needs to cut back on the smoking. Jeremy kept an eye on the clocks and churches outside the shops, and he saw that the minutes were hurrying on towards 12 o'clock, when, as Joe the Monster had said, Monsieur Bonbon closed his shop for the morning. And, sure enough, as they passed a gleaming shop window with the huge words, Bon Bon, inscribed above it in gold, and turned down the next side street and stopped, Jeremy heard some distant clock begin the first chimes of 12. The car door was thrown open, and they were hustled out onto the street. Run, run, said Joe the Monster furiously. We got up late, and he's shutting up his shop. Now don't forget, do exactly what you're told, or you'll come to no trouble. If not, and he lifted a big, hairy fist as Jeremy and Jemima sped off round the corner. Sure enough, the doors of Monsieur Bonbon's brilliantly lit shop were just closing as they dashed up. They had no chance to examine the row upon row of delicious sweets and chocolates temptingly arrayed on the long window.